we're going to switch up the format now slightly, and we're going to go into our networks of reuse panel. So we're going to hear from 3 fantastic practitioners who are going to present their work, and then we're going to have a really nice Q&A chaired by Sarah King, and then we'll open up for some questions to the audience as well. So I'll introduce Sarah, and then Sarah will kindly introduce the following speakers. So Sarah King is a design researcher and creative practitioner who believes that creativity can be the catalyst for positive change in response to the current ecological challenges. So her practice incorporates circular design principles and bio-fabrication processes to create new material alternatives. She is the Textiles Course Leader at HCA, a materials researcher at STEAMhouse, Birmingham, where we met each other, and the founders of Materials Club and Earthli projects. Her current work seeks to explore the physical relationship between materials, the human experience, and future environments, whilst questioning our current linear systems and the role of waste in our future material culture. So yeah, welcome to the stage, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Claire. It's always so nice when someone else introduces you so you don't have to do it for yourself. So that was very articulate, which is wonderful. So we're going to spend an hour now talking about reuse networks and exploring what it means to work within these kind of new and evolving systems that respond to a lot of the conversation that we are having today. I'm going to introduce Sarah Howard first, who is our first speaker. So Sarah is an award-winning British designer dedicated to pioneering circular and regenerative systems within the ceramics industry and beyond. Through the development of an industrial symbiosis model, she repurposes waste from other industries to replace virgin raw materials in the ceramic production process. Alongside authoring Circular Ceramics, a guide that empowers makers to adopt sustainable practices, she co-founded Golden Earth Studio, which connects artists with the construction industry to transform demolition and excavation byproducts into artworks that can then be reintroduced to the interior spaces. So Sarah's going to introduce her work.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. And as you said, my name's Sarah, and I'm the co-founder of Golden Earth Studio. And as you said, our aim is to bridge the gap between artists and the construction sector in pursuit of circularity. And in order to talk about how Golden Earth Studio was established, I have to draw on my own practice called Circular Ceramics, where I work with other industries and their byproducts destined for landfill, and work in ways where we can process it to reincorporate it back into ceramic production to replace virgin raw materials. So I work primarily in Indonesia, working with large-scale factories. So we're producing thousands of ceramics a month to feed into the hospitality sector. I also work with small-scale producers in the UK and abroad, and also studio potters. And when I approach this process, I build a waste materials library where we can identify what material it is from the manufacturer. It could be marble manufacturers, glass manufacturers, but what process creates that waste material. And then once we're confident that we can use it within production, I then develop a range of glazes and clay bodies that we can then use. And the result is tableware, like that you can see on the right side. And on a large scale, I also work with the construction sector. In Indonesia, this is an excavation site. We reclaimed clay from this site to produce an engobe that you can see here. And we use it as an alumina composition for the engobe as well as colouring oxide. And it now is a part of clay bodies, various glazes, and it's slowly infiltrating the bigger system that the factory rely on and the typical materials they use. So working with all these different industries, we have the glass panel industry, local waste management, NGOs. We work with all the waste materials that they collect from rivers, natural stone industry, metal. There's one that sticks out that is the hardest and most challenging to work with, and that is the construction industry. So in the UK, we have 29 million tonnes. I think I have a close statistic. Yeah. That's sent to landfill each year, and got that from the Environment Agency England. And as a ceramicist who relies on clay as my primary material, it made no sense that this material was coming from underneath my feet, being sent off elsewhere to be sent to landfill or moved from site to site till it found a purpose. And some of those reasons that I found that I kept presenting, like all these hurdles, were the other manufacturers I work with, they all have a permanent location. But construction, we're working from site to site, and therefore it's hard to gauge like where they're going to be next or at what point they're going to be excavating, which is a very short time in that the whole project takes place. And yeah, trying to follow them and see who's up for giving me their clay was just more work than reward. There's also the health and safety protocols, which I think Caroline touched on earlier. And it's obviously very important that these safety protocols are in place, but at what point do they become a hindrance that it prevents material reuse? And that's something that I'm battling with and trying to understand how do we possibly change legislation so that we can make materials accessible. And these projects are huge that we work with. I first worked with Argent Construction in King's Cross, and trying to figure out who it is that I need to speak to in order to get clay was really challenging. Is it the civil engineer, the project manager, the architect? Still to this day, I don't really know who it is. And so at Golden Earth Studio, we believe that inaccessible waste is a systemic failure. Ceramics is often thought of as a low-impact practice or sustainable. And when you delve into the supply chains that feed our practices or the manufacturing process, those supply chains are so vast and convoluted that we don't know where we're getting our materials from, how they're sourced, if it's what the ecological or social impact of that is. And my own practice is all about building transparent supply chains. So by connecting with local industries that are producing waste streams and devising ways to reintroduce that into our economy is like my own and also the Golden Earth Studio's focus. So Golden Earth Studio, we work primarily with housing developments, so small sites compared to, like I mentioned before, Argent in King's Cross. I found it easier to work with smaller projects, easier to find out who to work with to get clay. And we open up their sites, invite people to collect clay for free. It doesn't matter who you are or what you want to use it for, as long as you come to site, take it at the right time before it gets sent off to landfill. And we also work with demolition waste as well. It could be metal scraps that we've reused to turn into tableware. And then our next phase that we go into is how we feed that back into the economy. So with all this artwork or tableware that is produced, finding ways to work with interior designers and making a platform that it then becomes a desirable object from where it was previously discarded and seen to have no value. So we started back in around 2022, 2023, and I should talk about the co-founder. So he is a property developer, and he came to me and said, "I've got clay." And I was like, really? Like, no one ever offers me clay. So this is, usually I'm begging people or sending a load of emails. And so I went to his site, and this is in Wimbledon, and he showed me the project. It was a small housing development, but they were excavating a 5-meter basement. So they had this beautiful London blue and yellow clay, and all the piling excavations, which go around 15 to 18 meters deep, just exposing the most beautiful terracotta clay. And in a couple of days, we opened up the site to people to come and collect. And at that time, we did hire a group of people to process that clay into a clay body. But as I've shared with other people, that was a terrible financial choice. We won't be doing that again, I'm sorry. But yeah, people came to site, and we continue to do this to this day. So working with our small network of people who are willing to open up their construction sites to artists and creators to collect clay, they can come and do so. And people also message us to say, hey, at this period of time, I'll have clay here. And so we'll advertise that on our platforms. And part of collecting clay, you're handed over a transfer of clay custodianship, where we reinforce that you're not an owner of this material. And it's really bizarre that I also think that we own clothes or products or materials when we're on this earth for such a short period of time. And the idea of us owning soil or clay is quite bizarre. So when we reinforce the idea of custodianship, that you have this responsibility to ensure this lifetime of this material is extended for as long as possible, and it doesn't cause any ecological or social harm once it's passed over to your hands. We also run workshops where we're all about debugging what this clay is and how we can transform it in a ceramic practice. So we develop a number of clays, glazes, slips, engobes, and together we create a shared database of knowledge. So it's not about leaving with a final product, but about creating this knowledge together about this unknown material so that people can take the next steps to incorporate it into their practice. So some statistics: in 2024, we distributed 4.5 tons of clay from various construction sites in London. Around 68 people came to collect that clay. We had 32 people take part in our workshop, and in that we developed 11 glazes, engobes, slips, and clay bodies. 7 clay bodies, and we now operate in 2 locations. So we have an ambassador in the US that I trained her to copy this model and work with the construction sector, and so we also make clay available to creatives over there, which is really nice and something that I would like to expand across the world so that more clay can stay within the economy. And with people creating beautiful artwork, it only made sense that we then turned into a gallery. And so we work with a selected 10 artists who transform the clay in their own creative practices. And this is what we feed back into the economy, and we work with interior designers, art collectors to find a pathway for this new products. This is pictures from an exhibition in County Hall Pottery that we did for London Craft Week. This is a chess set by Jacob Chan where it's 100% London clay but fired to 2 different temperatures to distinguish the 2 sides. And these are some clay tests with different percentages of other clays to find a really stable clay body for production. Recently, we collaborated with Blue Bloom to create a clay immersion in Covent Garden, and we installed the artworks there. So we've got Jacob Chan on the left, Zahed Tajedin in the middle, Ji-Yun Kim. We've also got artists who work to create these rammed earth wall panels. Louis Vincent, who turns wood and uses the clay as a surface treatment along the lacquer, and a whole range of artworks, which you can all find on our website, goldenearthstudio.co.uk. And just to finish on a note that, we would like to engage with the construction sector more. We're working with such a tiny percentage of waste. When you look at the whole site, we want to work with more, and we want to make more clay available to more people. So it's all about the accessibility. So engaging with the construction sector is something that we want to expand with, and also finding more avenues to bring this material to our interior spaces. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was so interesting. What an incredible amount of work in such a short space of time. So next I'm going to introduce Freya Bruce. Freya is the co-founder of Recollective, a network working to reduce waste and empower communities through material reuse. Recollective diverts construction byproducts from waste streams in the construction industry, embedding them into new community infrastructure whilst also advocating for systems change and demonstrating scalable alternatives to common extraction practices. So welcome, Freya.
Thank you for introducing me, Sarah. It's nice to see Sarah again. We seem to be bopping around the same circles quite a bit, which is really nice. Collaboration is such a key part of this. So as she said, I'm a co-founder of Recollective. So we're an organisation, we've been going around 2 years. There are sort of 6 co-founders who work it across research, actually building with communities, logistics experts, programmers, and that will all become clear as I go through the slide. But yeah, our primary material is timber reuse, but a lot of our work is around how to make processes that are more accessible for people to reuse that timber and then embed it into community infrastructure. And that's applicable across a lot of materials. It just needs a lot of work because that system isn't currently in place. Of course, there we go. So far over the last two and a half years, we've diverted over 45 tons of material from waste streams. This is a photo from our warehouse when it is lovely and clean, which is quite rare nowadays because we are very busy, which is really brilliant. A lot of the material that we get is from the film industry, and the film industry to me represents the sort of very worst of our material culture. So in the construction industry, they have a long way to go, but in film, it's absolutely hideous. So they build across weeks, they film across days, they destroy it in hours, and then 70% of it is generally incinerated. And as you can see here, a lot of the material is really, really good quality. So I worked in the film industry for 2 weeks. I was meant to work for 2 weeks. I ended up working for 2 years because on my lunch break, I just watched them putting the timber into the skips and I just found it absolutely disgusting. So hence why we founded Recollective. From this timber that you can see here, there's a process that I'll go into shortly about how we end up designing them and embedding them into community buildings. We have empowered over 25 community spaces, and when I'm not doing Recollective, I'm an activist at heart. I have been for many, many years, and part of the thing that I find really unique and really exciting about Recollective is the fact that the spaces that we build, it's not just about the spaces, it's about what the communities do in those spaces. And with so much negativity around not only the climate crisis, but also the political situation in this country, it's absolutely incredible and a privilege to build spaces for communities that are progressive and they nudge the world in a better direction. So those spaces allow the communities to come in and amplify the amazing work that they already do. And that's the reason I get out of bed in the morning. My presentation is slightly scrappier than a lot of the other perfectly polished ones, but I think it actually reflects a lot of our process. A lot of it is quite rough and ready. I'm rarely dressed in nice clothes. I'm usually covered in dust and nails and wood dust, etc. And some of these pictures just show the sort of process that we get up to on a day-to-day basis. So actually all of these are from the first job that we ever did, where we went from 6 people in a WhatsApp group to diverting 11 tons of timber in a curtain sider, which was quite a steep learning curve. And so we take the material, and then the Recollective process is sort of deconstructing, sorting, and transporting that material through material logistics. And then there's a lot about systems that I've been talking about, systems change. So we audit, track, and process all of the materials that come through. So we've got a sort of mega spreadsheet where we track absolutely everything that comes through our organisation. And then there are specialist designers within the Recollective network who help to design, build and facilitate the delivery of new community infrastructure. A lot of the time, which is really nice, sometimes those structures are temporary. So we've actually had the same piece of timber come through 4 times. That's our record at the moment, but we're only 2 years in, so we'll have to see if that comes back round. So the introduction into sort of clay and how the two might end up working together. We were lucky enough to be supported by HS2 and OPDC, as well as others, Remade and POW, to develop this circular economy blueprints handbook, which is available online if you'd like to see it. And it's a practical guide for urgent community action. So there are a lot of circular economy organisations out there. They are chronically under-supported, and it's a really difficult sector because it's so new and emergent. So this handbook was meant to be looking at our process and the processes of Rescue Clay, who will speak later, amongst others, and how to form a framework to support other organisations and also to form pressure points for the industry to try and engage them in behaviour change and sort of change the way that they do things. So part of that was looking at, we looked at 5 or 6 different streams. I can't even remember now. But one of the processes that we looked at was the clay waste that came out from the HS2 site. So ourselves and Rescue Clay are both representatives of Park Royal, which is on one end of the HS2 line. And then Sarah has been involved in the sort of Birmingham end of things, as well as Claire, of course. And so, yeah, this is one example of a blueprint that we came up with along this process. And it involves, the reaching out to those industry partners, how to get that material to be delivered on site. We looked into the sort of factory and processing that would take if it was scaled up, and how it might be redistributed into the community in the form of pottery studios, workshops, and like a research and design lab. I actually, unfortunately, don't have any pictures on there because it's only happened this week, but we've almost finished a straw bale hut, which is outside North Acton Tube Station, which is an industrial estate near us. And it's been brilliant because we've used straw, which is a waste material from the barley industry. We've used timber from the local film industry around Park Royal. And along with Rescue Clay, we've been able to clay plaster the inside of that building. So it is typical of a lot of our structures because it's so tiny and sweet, and it sits within a sort of ring of skyscrapers. And I think from a protest background, it's quite beautiful because it's small and well considered, and it's got beautiful materials in it, where a lot of the development is quicker and with less consideration about the materials. I've got a 1-minute video, but I don't know. Is that gonna? Shall I just click it? Does that work? Okay. Oh. Oh, at the end. Thank you. All right, sweet. I'll fire through these then. As I mentioned before, something that's important to me and Recollective is that we want to build systems to process the material at scale, because the climate crisis is not only on our doorstep, but it's in our kitchen, throwing all the pots and pans off the wall. So we have developed a process where we track and label absolutely everything that comes through our system. On the bottom left is a 3D model of all of the material that we had diverted in January of this year. It's now actually twice that size, and a person is very small in that model, so it's quite cool to see it. And this process that reads the spreadsheet and makes it into a 3D model allows designers and architects to just drop that material into their model when they're designing community buildings. So it's making accessible those materials like right the way across the chain. A few points. So we have a manifesto on our website. The most important part of this is using action to critique the current system. So there's a huge amount of talk over the circular economy. Something that I'm quite proud of from Recollective's point of view is we do it, we learn through doing, and we critique through doing. When we're on site, we won the Planet Positive Award this year for the British Film Designers Guild, and we were up against film productions that had multi-million-pound budgets and sustainability crews of 20, 30 people working full-time on their productions. And we worked entirely voluntarily on the job that we won for. We just do. We don't just speak about things. We do, and we prove that the better is possible, and we sort of embarrass people into doing a little better who have more cash than us. We also believe that climate change is a symptom of a sick culture. So we need to change that culture in order to change the symptom, which is climate change. We also want to re-establish a healthy material culture that encourages a material-first approach. So in a lot of our design projects, the material comes first, and then we figure out what we can make with that material rather than vice versa. Very quickly, there's just a couple of projects. There's many more on our website. But this is shower hides that was designed and built by Flimsy Works alongside Young Wilders. And you may know NEP, it's a rewilding centre. It does some incredible work in the UK. Whoop, that's it telling me to shush. And yeah, it allows volunteers to shower whilst they're on site and continue their work investigating into rewilding, which is really cool. And then this is closer to home for us in Park Royal, and it's made from film flats, and it provides space for affordable affordable artists space for them to come and practice in, and that is us. Yeah, there's a lot more information online and on our Instagram, so do check us out. And then it is a minute long, but it's just a way. Sometimes talking about these things is really difficult because people don't understand what you're trying to say. And then when you actually look at the process, it's a lot easier to understand. So a lot of our community projects are in Cornwall, and a lot of our a lot of our material reclaim is in London. Oh, sorry, that's quite loud. And yeah, so it's just the full process. I'm so sorry. I didn't realise there was sound on this. Okay, there's a muted version available on the website. I won't put you through that. But thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Freya. Again, totally incredible, like the sheer willpower of people to make positive change. Okay, so finally I'm going to introduce Victor Pedrosa. So Victor is a neuroscientist and potter whose journey from clay reflects Rescue Clay's mission to transform and renew. Discovering clay as a therapeutic outlet over a decade ago, Victor combines his personal passion with his environmental concerns around the built environment and specifically construction waste. In 2024, he co-founded Rescue Clay to reclaim these discarded materials as a resource for creativity, community, and sustainable storytelling, demonstrating how individual transformation can spark collective change, where creative practice and environmental stewardship are deeply interconnected. Welcome up, Victor.
Thank you, Sarah. My name is Victor. I'm one of the co-founders of Rescue Clay. And just before I start, just one curiosity about us. The name Rescue Clay, we co-founded Rescue Clay, me and Prashant, a year ago, but the discussions started over 2 years ago, and the name Rescue Clay started in the last BCB, actually. I was taking part in one of the panels here, And when the name, we were called urban clay before that. And then at that stage, I heard someone using the word rescued, someone in the panel, and it really clicked for me. And that's when we started to call ourselves rescued clay. So BCB is really strongly part of our, of how we started, actually. Okay, so at rescued clay, you're going to see more numbers that might agree or disagree with previous numbers here. But what we are trying to do is to rethink the way that we use waste. We're using clay because I had some experience with clay. Prashant, the co-founder, also had experience with clay. But now we are trying to expand beyond clay and think about other forms of waste, especially because we are in a place that we are lucky to have so much waste around us in Park Royal. And we are learning so much from some of our neighbors that find really creative ways of using the waste around us. So, in terms of numbers, we have 13 million tons of clay going to landfill. And the source that we use, that we cite there, they do mention the 60 that Claire mentions, but some of it being reused in a way. This reuse can just be being dumped somewhere that's not landfill, but it's just dumped somewhere. So most of it is not creatively used. It's just used in a way that they can claim that's not being used to go to landfill. But most of it, so is a figure around like 60 tons of that, 13 tons being completely gone to landfill. But if it's 13, 29, or 60, it's a shit ton of clay going to landfill. 60%, and that number agrees with Claire, 60% of all of the waste in the UK comes from the construction industry. So there's a massive, massive amount of waste coming from this industry. And HS2 alone produced 1.3 tons of clay in the development so far. So it's a lot of clay. We have enough clay in the UK coming from waste to feed all of the ceramic practices in the UK. So we don't have excuse. We have excuse of the waste that we want to use. But in rescued clay, we're trying to do something similar to what Freya was saying, that instead of saying, this is what I want to make, and then going after the clay that would make that the easiest or the best, we think, this is the clay that we have. What can we make with this clay? So it is a massive amount of waste, but at the same time, it's also an opportunity. That's how we started Rescued Clay, thinking we can maybe address two problems in one go. One is the clay, it's coming, there is no way, it would be great if we could just say, no more developments in London. But that's not going to happen. There will be new developments. There will be more developments in our lifetime than we can use in terms of clay for ceramics, but there are other ways to use it. So we can address the problem of the construction waste, and at the same time address the problem of taking virgin clay from mines, sometimes coming from China, sometimes coming from other places, and lots of minerals that are coming from all over the world. Maybe we can also address a bit of that with this. So that's what we're trying to do. I'm going to talk a bit more about what we call urban mining, which is not us just calling, but about urban mining later on. But we are trying to address the two problems at the same time, the construction waste, and use this as an opportunity to address the problem of the virgin materials being used in the ceramic industry. And this is how we started. And I'm going to talk a bit more about each part, but right now, Rescued Clay, we think of Rescued Clay as three main pillars. One of them is the clay factory. That's where we get the clay. We process the clay, and we turn it into usable clay, which doesn't mean that it has to be processed to the point of ceramics, but processed to its use, which is another thing that we are doing at Rescued Clay, that we try to process it in the way that is only processed enough so that we can use it for the final purpose. If it's rammed up, you don't need to process as finely as if you were doing ceramics, for example. The other part of Rescued Clay is a ceramic studio. And this is the part that, when we first started, these had two main goals. One of them is financial. We wanted to run classes and workshops and so on. But to be honest, the main thing for us at the studio is to make other people use that clay. It's great that we are getting the clay. We are processing it ourselves, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that too. So we have people involved in that, but we can involve a lot more people when we just say, do you want to come for pottery class? And then suddenly we have a lot of people coming to the studio. Once they cross the door, then we start getting into their minds, right? That's when we start to say, this clay is coming from this place. This clay, we do this, we do that, and so on. And that's when we can bring awareness. It's by having this ceramic studio right there. And the third part is the design and research lab. And this is, the clay comes, and we need to understand that clay. There's a lot more that we want to do with that clay. So we are doing lots and lots of research. And one thing is that everything that we research, that we learn about this, it's completely available to anyone. We're trying to make it even more easily accessible. But right now, anyone that contacts us, you can get everything. We tell everyone everything that we know about this clay. So this is our process. If you've ever processed your own clay, you know how labor intensive it can be. Right now, we do everything by hand, 100% by hand. Not 100% by choice, but 100% by hand. And what we have to do is we get the clay, we break it down, we put in water, then we sieve, and then we sieve more, we sieve more, we sieve a bit more, and then we get to the clay that we have. So it's a lot of work, and we have loads of volunteers that are coming now and being part of this, and they just come because they want to be involved in this process. We know exactly how much we have to refine. So again, we only refine as much as we need. So if we need a 60 mesh, then we're going for 60 mesh. If we need a 20 mesh, we're going for 20 mesh. So we are only refining as much as we think that we need. And then we test again and test again so that we can optimize this process. Even though it's all by hand, there is an ideal way to do everything by hand. And then we create new objects, which could be, it could be cups. We have some samples here. It could be tiles. We do have tiles here, so if you want to touch those tiles, we have loads of samples here, so please do come talk to us if you want to see them, handle them, and so on. So you can make lots of stuff with this clay. And as I mentioned, all of the research that we do, we've done lots of testing in terms of firing range, in terms of water absorption, and so on. All of that is completely available on a website. We're revamping our website, so it will be there on our website as well. But it's all there, so that the idea is that we want to lower the barrier for someone to say, oh, I want to use this clay, but, okay, we want to start tackling those buts. Is it because you don't have access to the clay? We have 13 tons, come and grab yours. Is it because you don't understand which temperature to fire? We tell you. So you want to lower those barriers. Right now, we don't process enough to make it available for other people, so we can't give people processed clay, but we teach people how to process. You want to process in our studio, we have the space. Come process with us. If you don't have space at home, you process with us. We have the sieves. We have everything that you need to do it by hand. Then you take some clay home. So we are just trying to lower those barriers. And the next step would be to lower enough so that we've had loads of people that contacted us saying, oh, I want some clay. And then when we measure, oh, it's unprocessed. Forget about it. So that happens a lot. And we want to also lower that barrier whenever they say, oh, I don't know, I can't process. Then say, okay, here's the processed clay. We are not there yet, but that's one of our goals. So all of these is available. We can get this clay to get to near zero absorption rate. So it is earthenware, but depending on earthenware temperature firing, but depending on how you use the clay, you can get to basically zero absorption. It can get super smooth and polished. So the look that you give to it is completely up to you. It is very flexible that way, but there are challenges. It warps a lot. So unless you put some other ingredients, it warps a lot. And we started to be a bit more flexible with that. We wanted to be 100% waste. We are reducing that to like 90% now, and then to 80%, so that most of it is still waste, but makes it more workable depending on the application. It has a very narrow ideal firing range. If you go a bit too much, it bloats, which could be what you were going for. So I'm going to show you some examples of things that bloated, but now we just want to control that bloatness so that we can actually use that as a feature. And that's some of our ethos is most of the times when people say, and you'll see books named as clay failures and things like that, for us, we prefer the other book that's called Special Effects. So, so we are trying to change these so that we use it as it is, and don't try to force it to be what we want it to be. And this is another part of what we're doing right now. We are trying to mix this clay with all the forms of waste that we have around in the industry. There is a lot, and we've mixed it with coffee grounds, we've mixed it with sand, we've mixed it, there is a lot of marble powder around Park Royal, right across the corner. We've used, one of the things that we used recently the most is black sand. And you wouldn't guess, but black sand came from the film industry. Again, they generate a lot of waste. For them, it was just to make a set beautiful. For us, we can use it as raw material to create some texture and some interest. So that's what we did, for example, with this tile here. We only applied on the surface, and this is a tile that was flat and bloated. So I do encourage you to come and look at this one. And at the same time, working with Recollective, we made some tiles that will go to the North Acton station. And that's clay with black sand. And this one was flat because now we know how to make it flat, how to make it float. So we do a lot of these, try to mix with all the waste materials, organic and inorganic waste materials from the local industry. And we now are starting to go into more of architectural applications. The other co-founder, Prashant, he comes from an architecture background. So now we are going to soon start working with an architecture company to work on the Museum of London development that they're having in London. So probably in designs, because each tile of these would be too expensive when you compare with tile manufacturers, of course, but there will be design features for that. And unfired applications. A lot of what I mentioned so far was about fired applications, but we are getting more and more into unfired applications, because then we can reduce even more the impact that we have, and it can be reused, it can be repaired, which is something that's hard after you fire a piece. So we are working more and more doing plastering together with Recollective and learning from other people, because we came from a ceramics industry, so we are learning from these, from other people around us, what else we can do with this industry. And part of what we're looking forward tonight is to see the rammed earth here at the BCB as well, so that we learn more from everything around us. Right now, we process everything by hand. That's Prashant and one of the volunteers processing. And of course, we can't compete with industries in terms of price of each tile or if each piece. We make cups and functional pieces as well. We can't compete with prices when we are talking about other industries. They use heavy machines, and these would sound like a joke anywhere else, but if you do have a spare filter press laying around, we are looking for one, so you can, we accept donations of filter presses. So we are looking into this equipment and so on, and trying to get us some funding so that we can expand. Right now, we do have 13 tons of unprocessed clay. We got 17 in total. We have 13 tons left in a place where we actually only have it secured until June next year. So we are trying to get more funding so that we can go through all of this clay. Right now, it's hard to go through this clay, but we can, with an equipment like this, for example, we can 100 times, we can process 100 times what we process right now easily if we have the right equipment. And this time that we've been in this building, we've only had a space for 10 months now. And now we learn what are the main bottlenecks so that we can address the problems in this industry. So these is the next steps are especially going into more architecture. We also know that making cups from 13 tons of clay is a lot of cups. So we probably won't be making that. We want to go more and more into unfired applications so that we can actually use all of that clay. And you go through a lot more of that clay when you go into architecture applications. We run workshops. You can come, as I said, you can come and collect the clay for free. We teach you how to process the clay. We give you all of the information that we know about it so far. And we are now going out and looking for funding as well. If you want to be part, our doors are always open. You can come, you can volunteer, you can get together with us. You can message us on our email that, the .com went there, but you can message us or look on Instagram. We are a small group. So today here it's me and Giovanni, who is the studio assistant there, and has been doing a lot with us as well. So come and talk to us during the day as well, if you can.
Okay, so after that really inspiring selection of practitioners working in such an incredible way with what we call waste, but clearly right from these we can kind of see that, you know, that terminology is just not the right way of considering the materials in this space. So I've kind of broken this down into two questions, or kind of two areas that feel really important to this idea of kind of reuse networks and what it means to work in this kind of circular system and move away from the very kind of common practices and the business as usual as we see in the industry. So the first one of those is around partnerships. And I'm using the word partnerships, not collaborations, because I think there is a real challenge, and you are all traversing different spaces and creating real true collaborations in terms of your organisation, the collectives, the groups of people that you work with. But there are also partnerships that need to be built that really are speaking to different sets of values and objectives within different areas of industry and community and society. And so everyone's doing that in a slightly different way with kind of your different supply chains and the stakeholders that you work alongside. And so I wondered whether you could kind of each speak to maybe either kind of the beginning and end of your kind of supply chain and the collaborations or partnerships, whatever you kind of feel like you deem them to be, or just something that feels really pivotal in terms of making this work possible and enabling that opportunity to develop these systems and these networks. So if I pass to you.
Thank you, Sarah. So in terms of partnerships, I think I started really big working with companies like Argent Construction. And I think I learned like the hard way if that was the route I was going to go down. Even though they produce the most waste in the industry, actually trying to get hold of that each time they have a project is way more challenging. So actually scaling down and partnering with someone who's doing small residential developments made waste or clay byproducts much more accessible. Still, there's an abundance of clay and we only tap into probably less than 1%. So yeah, finding the right partnerships in that sector was crucial for Golden Earth Studio, and now looking at the other side of Golden Earth Studio and creating that avenue for those artworks, fine art and functional wear to come back into the economy. That's a whole different set of networks and partnerships that we have to create and build. Yeah. So yeah, it's two very different industries, and I think Golden Earth Studio just sits in the middle and two legs either side.
Yeah, and actually doesn't just sit in the middle, like you're facilitating the communication, the convening of those two spaces. And I also wonder what was really fascinating about the kind of foundations of the studio is your co-founder and that partnership or that collaboration between you and how that has enabled or supported some of this work.
Yeah, to have someone who's got multiple sites can give you access to clay, or we do art residencies on site where people produce a body of work. For him, like the narrative is so strong that to have a gallery that has that whole material story, I think that's something really unique, and hopefully that can drive us in continuing to make clay accessible to everyone.
Thanks. I guess so. There's two different sides. I'll very shortly tap into both of them. So the sort of input of material, I think the partnership was initially quite tense because we do sort of form a threat to their business as usual. And at the very beginning, we really had to bully our way into the industry. We had a couple of jobs where we had to ask for forgiveness rather than permission, and I had some less than pleased characters who we asked politely to be given their waste, and they were more reluctant. So we had to take it. I won't go into details about that. But anyway, the point is, on a positive spin, after 2 years of constantly knocking at the door and being like, guys, can we have your trash, please? And them saying no, we now have actually turned it round. So they are more recognising the value that we bring. And part of that is through, they did want to donate. Some partners wanted to donate in the industry. We said, actually, the responsibility for you to dispose of or reuse your material, you brought the material into this industry, and it is your responsibility to deal with it at the other end. So now we charge the industry to take it away, and the respect level that we're getting back is actually way more. And I think that's a really important part of this. It's about behaviour. It's about acknowledging the services that a lot of the circular economy is done. by goodwill and by volunteer, people who really, really care about this, and actually to say, no, we deserve this. It's your responsibility to get rid of your waste or to repurpose your waste responsibly. And a lot of the time, the film industry especially have loads of money. Very briefly on the other end, we've got great, really strong design partners who we couldn't do our work without, like Flimsy Works we've worked with several times. They understand what material we have available, and they're really sensitive and beautiful designers, and we couldn't deliver a lot of the infrastructure that we have without them. So, yeah.
For us, well, I have to talk about 3 stages, which is how we started, how we want to be soon, and how we want to be later on. So the way that we started was we had the clay dumped on us, and that was it, right? So we had suddenly they said we have 5,000 tons of clay coming every day. How much of it do you want? And we said, well, we can fit 4 tons. And then later on we got space and said, okay, now we can fit another 15 tons, and that's how it started. So for them, it was basically instead of sending it on the conveyor belts, they just put it on a truck, and then they brought it to us. That was all, and that's for us. That's more than enough than we can deal with right now. But our goal is to start talking to developers, and the idea would be something similar to what Recollective does, of not just saying, okay, I can take your clay for free, but actually say, we actually have a solution for 3 of your problems. One is you are generating waste. We all know that they have to tick boxes to say, well, I'm reducing my environmental impact. So we are ticking one of your boxes. The other one is they need to have something to have the community impact and community engagement, which for them, I always say this, but it's literally a tick boxing exercise. They invite people with 3 boxes, and they ask people to tick on those boxes. What do you want to see in this place here? And that's just another form of waste for them, because at the end of the day, that panel there, that board, will be on the waste, it will be in the bin. So we have another way for them to do that. If they are digging and they are reaching waste, or they are reaching clay, they can invite the local community to come and process that clay, and we can facilitate that. They can then make something with that clay that will go back to that place, and now they are not just being asked what you want to see here, they are building what will be seen there. And maybe 20 years from now, if they are making something out of ceramics, they can come back with their kids. Maybe they were kids when they made that, and the tile will still be there. If they're making a coffee mug for a coffee shop that's going to be built there, the coffee mug will still be there. The coffee mug will outlast them. So that's the second thing that we are dealing with. And the third thing that we can help them with is we can actually help design what would come back to that space. So it's 3 problems: environmental impact, community impact, and the artwork that they can put in the place. We can help with the 3 of them. So we want to work with them, with the developers. That's our future business model, is to work with the developers so that we can make it in a sustainable way for both us and them. So in the end, it's helpful for everyone. Later on, much later on, our goal is to not go to the developers and do that. We want the developers to come to us. And we will only be able to do that if we start, and every time that I talk to someone from the council, I poke them. They should not be on our side to go tell them that what they are producing is not waste, it's raw material. They should, every time that they dig something or that they destroy something, they should have to prove that that's waste, that it can't be used in another way. And that's the only way. When they have to prove, and quickly they will realize that they actually can't prove because it's not waste, it's clay, it's perfect clay. They will have to find another way to deal with it. When they have to find another way to deal with it, then if not, they are not allowed to build, then we'll have actually scalable impact. So that would be every time that I see someone from Earthli Council, which is where we're based, I'm poking them. Then from there, if we manage to get it one day in Earthli Council, then let's go to London, then let's go to UK, and that's the goal. They should have to rethink, because it's not waste, and there is other ways, and it should be, as Freya was saying, it should be on them to make that work, not on us to be begging to use some of the waste.
Thank you all. I think it's really interesting to see that actually in some cases clay is literally dumped and you haven't asked for it, and all of a sudden you have this resource to work with, and then in other cases it's much harder and you're almost kind of bashing the door down. But actually, the partnerships are the thing that start to build these connected systems that allow things to flow a little easier. And actually, Sarah, you were saying that kind of the familiarity of working with one developer time and time again, and then really understanding you, your values, your objectives, and vice versa, means that that process seems to flow much easier, and the capacity then for work in this space feels much more viable. And I think, Victor, you just touched upon scale, which is the other thing I really find interesting in this space. And so when I think about kind of this challenge of reuse and circular economy, I'm always brought back to the idea of actually material knowledge, and foundationally, if we don't understand those materials around us, how can we then start to understand the value, but also gain the autonomy and the confidence to ask questions around why we have the current systems we do. And then from that, actually feel like we can start to intervene in the process in the ways that you are now. And I think that really kind of is grounded in community and sharing that knowledge across kind of tangible spaces where you're working directly with materials, as well as kind of the theoretical and the data-driven ways of learning. And I think scale, in this case, at least from my perspective, scale's a really interesting thing, because business as usual would say that scale and success means we get bigger, we do more of it. But I wonder whether, from your perspectives, working with kind of different communities, but also working at kind of in partnership with large scale industry, how you feel about this idea of scale, and whether or not you feel like there is kind of some sort of social tipping point where actually, from a ground and a grassroots level, these practices become so normal, and we find infrastructures and ways of working that allow the distribution of these resources and the value of these resources back into the community in a much more evenly distributed and kind of generous manner. Whether you feel that actually scale is possible from the ground up, or whether you feel like scale will only happen in whatever terms you think scale, means, will come from the top. And I wondered if you could just reflect on that a little bit from kind of the spaces you work in.
At Golden Earth Studio, we've had a lot of conversations with like brick makers like H.D. Matthews, various like tile making producers about how to scale up this waste material. Even talking on the way here on the train with Victor about like the challenges in doing that. And I feel like there's a certain point that you can't just scale up a little bit, you've got to scale up a considerable amount for it to then be economically viable to scale up this material and bring it back into the economy. But I think for Golden Earth Studio, perhaps we're more focused on scaling the model of distributing clay and making clay accessible, whether it's in the States, in Los Angeles, and finding those pioneers around the world who can open up those waste streams using the same model we've used. I think I would like really dream of having like a really big factory with filter presses and pug mills that can just transform this clay into something that ceramicists can easily use or manufacturers can use. And I think it's definitely possible. But yeah, I think we need to connect with the big producers who have the space, the machinery and the facilities in order to do that, because it doesn't feel like right now it's going to be possible from the ground up.
Yeah, I think at Recollective we talk a lot about scaling like this way rather than scaling like this way. So that way would be like, oh, we've built a community hall, now let's build a community skyscraper and we can make a bigger thing. It's not actually about scaling that way. It's about saying, okay, well, we've done 10 community projects last year, and these are all of the spidery like positive impacts out of each of those spaces. This year we're going to do 20, that for example, this year we're going to do 20 community projects, and they're going to be not just in London or in Cornwall, but they're going to be in Preston and Manchester and Birmingham and Glasgow and all of these other places. I think that's important. We don't need to scale like in the same way as like business as usual. And and then the other thing is what's been touched on that Sarah was touching on, which is about the processes for us. I was an art student years ago. I didn't see myself in logistics or programming or spreadsheets. I think I would be very disappointed in myself if I saw myself now. Not in that way. It is exciting, and it's the key part. The reason that I find it exciting is because it's the key part that unlocks it happening at scale. That's why it's exciting, and it's not in reclaimed materials. It's not necessarily being done, and it's innovative, it's exciting, and it's the way that we have to go, and that's what makes it exciting. And I think also it's creative, but that's for another day.
It's hard for me to talk about this because I have a bit of, I don't want to bring the energy down, so I have a bit of a half pessimist, but I find it realistic view of these. As I was saying, I think things will only change when policy changes. And policy is determined by a very small group of people in the end. But that said, I think the only way to make those people actually change policy is from the bottom up. So it's by talking to people. That's why I think us processing the clay is completely useless unless we talk about it. Right? It's the ceramic studio that's actually making is the main activist part of our process. Usually we say that our factory is the soul of it, but you need hands, you need to talk to people and so on. So it's by talking to people that we can eventually change. Sometimes we teach kids, and you never know. It could be that kid will be, in 25 years, that kid will be the next prime minister. And then maybe it's by planting those seeds here and there that at some point it will reach. But it can only reach, I see it only really changing at scale when someone powerful changes policy. And so, I mean, I think it starts with the groundwork, but it's only at that stage. But then I think there is a tipping point. And I hope to see it in my lifetime. Energy down again, yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. Oh, I think it's really interesting to kind of hear your perspectives on this, being very much in it, acting, demonstrating, showing what's possible, and then actually really reflecting on scale as an opportunity. And I really like kind of the notion of kind of that and that as being like, actually maybe scale is something where we really look to kind of move out and do more and create the spider webs, which is really beautiful. So I think we've probably got about 5 minutes maybe for a few questions from you guys. So we've got a runner, but if people want to pop up hands, yes, so green top, just.
Hi everyone. Yeah, that was super inspiring. It's great to see what you're doing. I started having some of these questions about reusing clay from construction sites, and I think I fell at an early hurdle on this, and I think some of that speaks to your conversation about scale. So I was talking to really good eggs at Arah and at Network Rail, and the hurdle, which I could have explored a bit more in hindsight, hearing from you guys, but the rebuttal was all about pollution and the ground being toxic, and about how to sort that. And I guess looking at your sites, it's kind of beautiful seeing those boreholes and that clay. But I guess my question's more about, have you come across issues with pollution and needed to sort, or is that less of an issue than I originally thought? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, go for it. Okay, I'll go first. For us, so far, because we only got it from the HS2 site, and there was nothing in that site before. Oh, nice. So we haven't had the issue with that, but one thing that we were told, and we just hope that is true, is that clay was tested, because for them to even send it to landfill, they need to test it for some sort of contaminations, because if they don't, they have to pay about 100 times more to dispose of it. because it needs to be classified as inert waste. And for that, they need to do some tests, so like lead and things like that. So some of it was tested. I don't know if that always happens for all sites. I know that for there, it tested. We've had other people in the neighborhood that we start to get in touch with. And as I said, we are not short in clay, but we've had people that said, oh, I might have some clay. And they said that they already knew that their site was contaminated. In that case, then what our approach right now is there is way too much clay. So we just go to a different site right now. So I don't know what would be done for that particular case, but there is a lot that is completely usable right now coming from the ground, at least in London. I know that. And I mean, London is a massive place that you could think that it's all contaminated, but there is a lot that isn't.
Do you want to go?
I'll yield the floor to much more expertise.
I think for me, part of it is common sense. You can look at the history of a site and know if industrial practices took place there. For example, like King's Cross. I know that the Triangle site there that worked with the clay, they couldn't use it because it was so toxic and it was just doing crazy stuff in the kiln. But working with housing development sites, were often in areas that the clay's, the ground's been untouched. So we are getting pure terracotta, and we definitely do less paperwork than rescued clay. Try and avoid that at all costs, but by not classifying it as waste, I think we can avoid some of the paperwork or the hurdles that industries might place in front of us to get hands on it. So yeah, I think look at the history of those sites that you want clay from and make a good judgment and test it in your kiln before going full production.
Can I just compliment on something? Just say that when we got the clay because of the work from the arts and culture team at HS2. So they were really keen for us, and I think Louise is around here as well, so I should say a massive thank you for her. And they had, we actually didn't do the paperwork. They had 9 months of headaches trying to declassify it from waste because it had already been classified as waste. So basically when you talk to a developer, if they have already labeled it as waste, that's a nightmare. We don't have a waste license, I can't receive that. But it's their choice. It's completely a choice. It's a label that you put. So if before you put that label, you say, no, it's raw material for someone else, that's what took them 9 months to actually transform it, and was within a different group there as well that they did that. Then we could receive the other. We had received, can I say that illegally? I mean, we had received like kind of like part of it without all of the approvals because it was waste and we didn't have a waste license. But then afterwards, we could only receive the main batch after they changed it.
One more question. Should we go up the back?
Okay, sorry. So I caveat this with the fact that this is kind of a gross question, but I think in this incredibly inspiring work that all three of you are doing with your companies, these we're all dying for these systems that you've like theorized to be put into practice in bigger ways. And I think the only way that these things are put into practice in bigger ways is if you prove that they're financially viable. Like getting policy changed really only works in this country if people know that they can make money out of it. And so I don't need an answer to this, but like I think it's really important that you prove that you are making money out of this. And especially that was why it was super interesting to see when you said that you've started to demand money for taking away their waste. Like it's so important. And in this environment in which circular economy, your currency is the waste, but you're trying to branch out into other sectors in which that waste is not seen as a currency. You need to use a currency that's actually readable to everyone, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Does anyone want to? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very good point, and it's a very common point, as in people are like, how is it going to make any money? I have 2 points on this. Firstly, encouraging the industry to pay, and also I think we'll talk this afternoon about policy. It's the same thing, where it hinders and where it helps. another key thing for us in terms of it being financially viable, and I guess it's similar for clay, the waste material or the end of life one material that comes to us, because the designing for deconstruction or testing in clay's case, it is not part of the process when it comes to us. So, for example, we get a film set. It's absolutely covered in nails. I'm working on a site at the moment where a temporary structure has been nailed and screwed and bolted. So we're on site trying to take it apart. This takes a huge amount of time. And if somebody had sat at day one when they're doing their first sketch and said, all right, we know that we're going to have to pay for it to be disassembled at the end. Instead, usually it would be broken down and put into skips, like, the frames would be put into skips, so they don't think about it. And when people look at the circular economy organisations at the end and they say, how are you going to make it viable? It's like, well, let's just pause here. Let's go back 5 steps and say, how are you going to design it so that it can be disassembled? And it's a behaviour change, and it's a process, and it's things that we talk about a lot, those two things. But if that frame, for example, had just been screwed together, my life would be a lot easier. I'd spend less time on site, and I'd be able to do it for less money. So it's where is the pressure and who's responsible, and we have to look all the way back, and say, how can those processes be made easier and therefore cheaper? Sure, more financially viable.
Just to complement that, it is a point that we always bring up, and I think Freya does that a lot as well, because it's true. It's true. You are completely right. The one thing that I would say is, I know that money, when we say like this cost £100, this cost £1,000, it's easy to recognize. It is a common currency, but more and more the environmental impact is becoming another common currency. That if we continue doing what we're doing right now, it might not be you, but the next generation will be paying for that, and it will be paying either in lives or in money as well. So it is becoming a bit more common to show the impact in terms of these currencies as well. For us, and similar to what Sarah was saying before, we are at a point that to be able to scale and show that actually financially it is viable, we need a bit of an injection. For example, we need someone here to, there is a filter press there, take it. So we need these, and then from there, yes, it will definitely be more viable. Right now, no, we are like every month, we're like, okay, next month, this is what we can do, this is what we can do. But we are in the first year as well of having a space and being there. So we knew that we'd be struggling like this, but it's definitely a great point. We need to show that it can be done.
And just to add, I think virgin resources will become more and more expensive to extract in the future. I think there's no doubt that that price is going to continue to go up. So I think perhaps the economy might reach a point where it is more viable for them to take on clay from construction sites and use that as the primary resource rather than rely on virgin raw materials. And it might get more expensive for the construction industry to pay grab lorries to take it somewhere, because that somewhere might not exist anymore, or we're going to be shorter and shorter on space. And in terms of like actually showing value to that material, to me it's amazing that that discarded material can be placed in one artist's hands and they can then sell it for 4 figures. I think that is like a very simple example that it is a desired material. And even though we work with London construction sites, we have people coming from Bath, Kent to come and collect this clay, which to me is crazy. So yeah, I think, hopefully it will shift in the future, but I don't know how near that future might be.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you for the questions. I think what it feels like is there is an awareness of the levers in this space that mean that we can start to encourage and kind of bring people on that journey in terms of being an industry. So whether that be around kind of environmental, social levers, as well as, looking at policy change. But alongside that, there is a need for kind of a common language, I think, across whether it be industry, whether it be kind of the facilitators developing these new systems and networks, but a common language that really kind of seeks to understand the drivers on both sides, the needs on both sides, and how they can really work collectively together in a way that really, you know, breeds change in a really valuable and scalable way. Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much, Sarah.